After I presented my breakthrough cancer treatment protocol to the hospital board, my husband stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "Gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. My wife clearly doesn't understand how real medicine works. Security will escort her out." I was still trembling in the underground parking garage when a silver Bentley pulled into the spot beside me. A woman in her late 50s, wearing a crisp navy suit, stepped out and said, "Get in, Dr. Martinez. I'm about to show your husband what happens when you silence the right woman." My name is Dr. Elena Martinez, and I'm 63 years old now. But this story begins 6 years ago, when I was 57 and still believed my marriage to Dr. Richard Martinez was a partnership. We'd met in medical school 35 years earlier. He went into hospital administration and became CEO of St. Catherine's Medical Center in Boston. I stayed in research, specifically oncology, working in the basement labs while he occupied the corner office on the 15th floor. For 3 years, I'd been developing what I called the Martinez Protocol, a combination immunotherapy approach for stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The survival rates in my small trial group were unprecedented. 83% of patients who should have had 6 months were still alive after 2 years. I was careful with my data, triple-checking everything, because I knew how extraordinary these results were. Richard knew about my work, of course. We'd been married for 32 years, or at least, I thought we had a marriage. Looking back, I realize I'd been more like a convenient accessory, someone to accompany him to fundraising galas, someone whose medical credentials made him look good, even though he constantly dismissed my research as Elena's little hobby. That morning, I'd finally worked up the courage to ask him if I could present my findings to the board. We were in the middle of budget discussions for the next fiscal year, and I needed funding to expand my clinical trials, just $2 million. For a hospital that generated over $500 million in annual revenue, it was nothing. "The board meeting isn't really the place for this, Elena," Richard had said over his coffee that morning, not even looking up from his phone. "Those men are discussing serious hospital business." "This is serious hospital business, Richard," I'd replied, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. "We could be looking at a breakthrough that saves thousands of lives. Your hospital could be at the forefront of—" "My hospital," he'd interrupted, finally meeting my eyes, "needs to focus on profitable departments, not throwing money at pipe dreams." But I went anyway. I put on my best suit, the burgundy one I'd bought for my daughter's wedding 2 years earlier, printed out my research in bound presentations, and walked into that boardroom with my laptop under my arm. The board members looked surprised to see me. Most of them knew me as Richard's wife, the woman who smiled politely at Christmas parties. Not as Dr. Elena Martinez, who'd published 17 papers in oncology journals and had been quietly revolutionizing cancer treatment in the basement of their hospital. Richard's face went red when he saw me, but I was already connecting my laptop to the projector. "Gentlemen," I began, my voice stronger than I felt, "I'm here to present data on a new immunotherapy protocol that could change how we treat pancreatic cancer." I showed them everything: the patient outcomes, the comparison to standard treatments, the potential for expansion to other cancer types. I watched their faces shift from polite confusion to genuine interest. Dr. Chen, the chief of surgery, leaned forward. "These survival rates are remarkable, Dr. Martinez. Have you submitted this for peer review?" That's when Richard stood up. His chair scraped against the floor, the sound cutting through my answer. "Gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. My wife clearly doesn't understand how real medicine works. She's been playing around with some patients in the basement, but this isn't actual research. It's not even properly supervised." I felt my face burn. "Richard, that's not—" "Elena, sweetheart," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're embarrassing yourself. These men don't have time for this. Security will escort you out." The room went silent. I looked around at the board members, waiting for someone to object, to say that they wanted to hear more, but one by one, they looked away. Hospital politics. Richard signed their paychecks, approved their budgets. I was just his wife. 2 security guards appeared at the door. I recognized them both. Tom had been working there for 15 years. I'd brought him coffee when his daughter was in the ICU, but he wouldn't meet my eyes as he said, "Ma'am, please come with us." I gathered my materials with as much dignity as I could manage, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped my laptop. As they escorted me out, I heard Richard's voice behind me, smooth and confident. "Now, gentlemen, let's get back to actual hospital business." The walk to the parking garage was the longest of my life. Tom and Marcus, the security guards, at least had the decency to keep quiet. When we reached the parking level, Tom said softly, "I'm sorry, Dr. Martinez. I'm just doing my job." I nodded, not trusting my voice. They left me standing next to my 12-year-old Honda, the car I'd been driving since our kids were in high school. Richard drove a new BMW every 2 years. "Hospital CEO perks," he always said. I was fumbling with my keys, my vision blurry with tears. I was too angry to let fall when I heard the smooth purr of an expensive engine. A silver Bentl, probably worth more than I'd made in the last 5 years, pulled into the spot beside me. The woman who stepped out looked like she'd walked off the cover of Fortune magazine. Late 50s, perfectly styled silver hair, navy suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, and eyes that were sharp and assessing. But there was something else there too. Recognition. Understanding. "Get in, Dr. Martinez," she said, as if we'd had this appointment scheduled for weeks. "I'm about to show your husband what happens when you silence the right woman." I should have been scared. I should have asked who she was, but something in her voice, in her stance, told me she was exactly what I needed in that moment. I got in the car. The interior smelled like leather and money. She pulled out of the parking garage and onto the Boston streets with practiced ease, not saying anything for several blocks. Finally, she glanced over at me. "I'm Dr. Catherine Walsh. I watched your presentation from the live stream." "The live stream?" I echoed. "Hospital board meetings are recorded and streamed to department heads," she explained. "I'm the chief of oncology at Massachusetts General, and Dr. Martinez, what your husband did to you in there, I've seen it before, had it done to me, in fact. 30 years ago, when I tried to present my research on combination chemotherapy protocols, my department head, who I'd been dating for 5 years, stood up and told the board I was having a nervous breakdown." I looked at her more carefully. Dr. Catherine Walsh. I knew that name. She was a legend in oncology. Her protocols were being used in hospitals worldwide. "What happened?" I asked. "He married his secretary 6 months later," she said, her voice matter of fact. "And I went on to develop treatments that have saved approximately 200,000 lives, according to the last estimate. I also make about $4 million a year in consulting fees, speaking engagements, and royalties, so I'd say I won." We pulled into a parking garage underneath a sleek office building I didn't recognize. "Where are we going?" "To meet some people who are very interested in your work," Dr. Walsh said, turning off the engine. "When I saw your presentation, I made some calls. The people upstairs have been looking for exactly what you've developed." The elevator took us to the 23rd floor. The doors opened onto a reception area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. The logo on the wall read, "Beacon Pharmaceuticals." Dr. Walsh led me into a conference room where 3 people were already seated. She made introductions. "Dr. Martinez, this is Jennifer Zhao, CEO of Beacon. Dr. Sarah Kim, our head of clinical trials. And James Thornton, Chief Financial Officer." Jennifer Zhao stood up, extending her hand. She was younger than I expected, maybe 45, with an energy that filled the room. "Dr. Martinez, we've been following your work for the past year." "You have?" I managed. "When you published that paper in the Journal of Clinical Oncology last spring about modified T-cell treatments, we took notice," she continued. "We've had people discreetly monitoring your trial results. Your survival rates are extraordinary." Dr. Sarah Kim pulled up data on the screen. "We've been developing a companion drug that we believe would work synergistically with your protocol. Separately, our results have been good, but not groundbreaking. But combined with your approach?" She shook her head in wonder. "We could be looking at a paradigm shift in how we treat not just pancreatic cancer, but potentially all solid tumors." I sat down heavily. "I don't understand. If you've been following my work, why didn't you contact me before?" "Because you worked for Street Catherines," Jennifer said bluntly. "Any research you conducted there, any breakthroughs you made, They owned the intellectual property. We couldn't approach you without risking a lawsuit. But now, she smiled, now, you've been very publicly dismissed and humiliated by their CEO. I'm guessing you're not feeling particularly loyal to Street Catherines right now. She was right. I wasn't. We want to offer you a position as our chief research officer, Jennifer continued. Salary of $400,000, plus equity in the company. Full funding for your clinical trials, expanded to a multi-center study. And most importantly, your name on the patents. The Martinez-Beacon Protocol. What do you say? I thought about Richard. About 32 years of having my work dismissed. About being called sweetheart in a boardroom full of men who should have known better. About security guards escorting me out of the hospital where I'd worked for 23 years. When can I start? The paperwork took 3 weeks. In that time, I moved out of the house I'd shared with Richard and into a small apartment in Cambridge, close to Beacon's offices. Richard tried calling once, but only to ask if I was done with this little tantrum so we could get back to normal. I blocked his number. Dr. Walsh became more than a colleague. She became a mentor, a friend. She'd been through this before, she told me. She knew what it was like to have your marriage and your career implode simultaneously because a man couldn't handle you being smarter than him. The anger is good, she said over coffee one morning. Use it. Channel it into your work, because the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so successful they can't ignore you. I threw myself into the expanded trials. Beacon gave me everything I needed. A team of 12 researchers, state-of-the-art facilities, and most importantly, they listened to me. When I said we needed to modify the dosing schedule, they didn't pat me on the head and dismiss my concerns. They ran the numbers and made the changes. The results were even better than we'd hoped. The combined Martinez-Beacon protocol showed a 91% 2-year survival rate for stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Patients who should have been planning funerals were going back to work, watching their grandchildren grow up, living. 18 months after Richard had me thrown out of that boardroom, the results were published in the New England Journal of Medicine. The medical community went wild. Every major news outlet covered the story. Breakthrough treatment offers hope for deadliest cancers. Read the headline in the New York Times. My phone rang constantly. Interview requests, speaking invitations. 3 different hospitals offered me department head positions at salaries that would have made Richard choke on his morning coffee. But the call I was waiting for came on a Tuesday afternoon. Jennifer Zhao walked into my office with a smile that could have lit up the city. The FDA just fast-tracked our approval process. We'll have the protocol available to patients within 6 months instead of the usual 3 years. I sat back in my chair, letting it sink in. Thousands of patients. Thousands of people who would live because of work I'd done. Work that Richard had called Elena's little hobby. That evening, Dr. Walsh took me out to celebrate. We went to a restaurant in the North End, the kind of place where Richard used to take important donors. The maitre d' recognized Dr. Walsh immediately and escorted us to the best table. You know what I love about success? Dr. Walsh said, raising her glass of wine. It's not just about the money or the recognition, though those are nice. It's about proving that they were wrong. Every man who ever dismissed you, every colleague who looked the other way, every board member who let Richard humiliate you. They were all wrong. We clinked glasses. But she wasn't finished. And here's what else I love. In about 6 months, when the Martinez-Beacon protocol becomes standard treatment, Street, Catherine's hospital is going to realize what they lost. They could have owned this. Instead, they escorted you out with security guards. She was right. I'd already heard through the grapevine that Street Catherine's was struggling. Several of their top donors had pulled funding after the story broke about how they'd treated me. Turned out that publicly humiliating a brilliant researcher wasn't great for a hospital's reputation. 2 years after that awful day in the boardroom, I was invited to speak at the American Society of Clinical Oncology's annual conference, 5,000 oncologists from around the world. The keynote address. I wore burgundy again, the same color as the suit I'd worn that day, but this one was custom-tailored and cost more than my first car. I'd learned that success wasn't just about the work, it was about claiming your space, demanding respect, looking the part of someone who couldn't be dismissed. The standing ovation when I finished lasted 3 full minutes. Afterward, there was a reception. I was surrounded by colleagues wanting to discuss the protocol, residents asking for advice, pharmaceutical executives pitching partnerships. That's when I saw him. Richard, standing at the edge of the room, looking smaller than I remembered. Older, diminished. He made his way through the crowd, and I watched him approach with detached curiosity. Dr. Walsh, standing beside me, murmured, "Want me to call security?" I almost laughed. No. Let's see what he has to say. "Elena," Richard began, and I noticed he didn't call me sweetheart. "I saw your presentation. It was impressive." "Thank you," I said, my voice neutral. He glanced around, clearly uncomfortable. "I wanted to apologize for how things ended. I should have supported your research." "I see that now." "You should have supported your wife," I corrected. "The research was going to succeed with or without you. But our marriage? That needed support, and you chose to humiliate me instead." "I know. I made a mistake." He took a breath. "I've left Street Catherine's, actually. The board asked for my resignation after the donors pulled out. I'm at a smaller hospital now, in Providence. But Elena, I've been thinking, maybe we could try again. Start over. I could support your work now. We could be a team." I looked at this man I'd been married to for 32 years. This man who'd shared my bed, my life, my dreams, who'd stood up in front of his colleagues and made sure everyone knew he didn't respect me, who'd had security guards escort me out. "Richard," I said slowly, "I am already on a team. I have 12 researchers who respect my expertise. I have colleagues who value my input. I have a mentor who actually understands what the word support means. And I have about 400 patients who are alive right now because I didn't let you stop me. Elena, please." The answer is no. It's been no since the moment you chose your ego over my dignity, since you chose your insecurity over our marriage, since you chose to silence me instead of celebrating me. I paused. "You didn't just lose a wife that day, Richard. You lost a partner who would have shared all of this success with you. Instead, you're standing here, alone, at a conference where everyone knows what you did." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Dr. Walsh stepped forward, placing her hand on my shoulder. "I think Dr. Martinez has made herself clear. Perhaps it's time for you to go." I watched him walk away, shoulders hunched, disappearing into the crowd. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity, just a quiet certainty that I'd made the right choice. "How do you feel, doctor?" Walsh asked. "Free," I said, and I meant it. 3 months later, Beacon Pharmaceuticals went public. The stock opened at $42 a share and closed that first day at $68. My equity stake was suddenly worth $12 million. $12 million for work I'd been doing in a basement laboratory while my husband dismissed it as a hobby. I didn't quit. Money wasn't why I'd gone into medicine. I kept working, kept researching, kept expanding the protocol to other cancer types. But I did buy myself a penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Common and a silver Mercedes because I liked how Dr. Walsh's Bentley had looked that day in the parking garage. My daughter called me the night the stock went public. "Mom, have you seen the numbers? You're rich." "I was always rich, sweetie," I told her. I just didn't know it yet. Last month, I got a letter from the Nobel Committee. Not the prize itself, not yet, but I'd been nominated. For my work on the Martinez-Beacon protocol, which had now been used to treat over 50,000 patients worldwide, with survival rates that were rewriting oncology textbooks, Dr. Walsh sent me a bottle of champagne with a note. "Remember when I told you success was the best revenge? I was wrong. Living well isn't revenge, it's just living. And you're doing it brilliantly." She's right. This isn't about Richard anymore. It never really was. It's about the 63-year-old woman who almost let herself be silenced, who almost accepted that her work wasn't important, that her voice didn't matter, that she should be grateful for whatever scraps of respect her husband chose to throw her way. That woman is gone. In her place is Dr. Elena Martinez, Chief Research Officer of Beacon Pharmaceuticals, developer of the Martinez-Beacon Protocol, nominee for the Nobel Prize in Medicine, and someone who will never, ever let anyone make her feel small again. Sometimes, late at night in my penthouse, I think about that moment in the parking garage, me, trembling and humiliated, fumbling with my keys. And then Dr. Walsh's voice, cutting through my shame. Get in! I'm about to show your husband what happens when you silence the right woman. She showed me more than how to get revenge. She showed me how to value myself, how to demand respect, how to take up space in a world that constantly tells women, especially older women, to be smaller, quieter, more accommodating. I still see Richard occasionally at medical conferences. He's remarried, I heard. Someone younger, someone who won't challenge him. Good for them. I hope she's happy. I hope he's learned something, but honestly, I don't think about him much anymore. I'm too busy saving lives, mentoring young researchers, building something that will outlast all of us. The Martinez-Beacon protocol will be treating cancer patients long after I'm gone. My name will be in medical textbooks. My work will matter. And that bitter, angry moment in the parking garage, it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to stop waiting for permission to be brilliant, to stop hoping Richard would finally see my value, to stop making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I was always going to be extraordinary. I just needed someone to throw me out of that boardroom to realize it. Did you like the story? If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know where you're watching from. See you in the next one.